Welcome to the Campaign Trend podcast, where you're joining in on a conversation with the entrepreneurs, operatives, and experts who make professional politics happen. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Our guest today is Ryan Lyk, CEO of WinRed, the GOP's small dollar fundraising platform. Before taking the reins at WinRed, Ryan helped build Rev and worked across digital fundraising, email, and campaign strategy. Today, we're digging into WinRed's new WinRed Effect report, which details how the platform has reshaped Republican fundraising over the last few years and what that means for campaigns moving forward. Ryan, just talk to us for a little bit about how WinRed has changed the fundraising culture on the right since its launch, because obviously we're in this day to day. It's sometimes helpful to take a step back and see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Eric, anybody using the platform day to day has seen how it's evolved, how it's changed. But when you're not somebody who's actually logging and building pages, some of that can be lost. So we wanted to summarize some of the biggest changes we've seen since our launch 6 years ago. And, as a reminder, WinRed was established by a united front of all the party committees, the Trump campaign, and it was designed to compete with ActBlue to help us improve our small dollar fundraising game and to help our candidates raise more and win more elections, right? And so fast forwarding, over the last 6 years, what has the outcome been? Well, there's three things that I want to highlight. One is, WinRed has helped unify the GOP against ActBlue. That much is very clear. ActBlue has been a big threat, and everybody is, everyone gets it, which is great. Digital programs are stepping up, and everybody's doing better. Number two, GOP candidates are raising more money online through the WinRed features that we've developed, and maybe more importantly, our candidates are investing in each other through conduiting. And three, smaller teams can do as much as presidential sized teams could years ago because the platform has become significantly more easier to use and more efficient. As you mentioned, we released an 18-page memo that summarizes all of this and goes into details on some of these changes and how fundraising's evolved since WinRed launched. And look, the top line is that finally Republicans have a tool to compete with the Democrats, and the numbers show that we are making progress.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to remember where we were back before WinRed launched, which was you had ActBlue, which is kind of this behemoth, and what every donor on the left had an account with ActBlue, and it was one click. And more critically, you could donate to dozens of Democrats at once. So you would see this, what we call conduiting behavior. And so with WinRed and us moving to a single unified platform, we got everyone with these one-click accounts, and we've got a unified front where you can reliably raise for other candidates. And so I think it's important just to kind of stand on the mountain and look back where our side has come from. So what are the biggest shifts you've seen in donor behavior, whether that's, things like frequency of giving, average gift size, repeat donors, over the 6 years now that we've had WinRed?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Eric. One of the biggest trends is that an increasing amount of donations are coming from donors with donor profiles. And that was one of the purposes of it. It's a great benefit of having a unified platform. Prior to WinRed, you had a bunch of platforms. They're all fragmented, and different groups use them for different purposes, and they all had different strengths and weaknesses. And by bringing everybody together, we're putting those donor profiles all in one unified system so that they're accessible to all campaigns. And the results really speak for themselves. Last election, 24 cycle, 46% of donations came from donors with donor profiles, which is great. Oh, wow. It allows them to give faster. And if for your listeners who don't know, it basically allows them to save their credit card information. So when they come to any WinRed page, they're able to donate very quickly. Their information is already there. They don't have to pull out their wallet and their credit card and type it in. And the result of that, has been interesting. One of the pieces of it is that donors are giving more frequently, and they're giving in smaller amounts. So the average gift in 2020 was about $40. In the 24 cycle, that dropped to about $26. However, the charges per donor was about $7 back in 2020, and that's increased to about $11 in 2024. And so, what this attributes to, probably a bunch of factors. Fundraising teams have gotten a lot more efficient at eliciting small dollar donations, and that naturally drives the average gift down a little bit. It's easier for donors to give to a bunch of candidates because of conduiting and otherwise. And so they're probably giving to more campaigns in general than they were. Maybe in the past it was just one $100 donation. Now it's getting split
Right.
up over time or, among different candidates and campaigns. And so the small dollar ecosystem is growing, is really what this shows.
Yeah. And we do need to talk about some of the headwinds facing fundraisers. So we are specifically talking about email and SMS deliverability. What role does WinRed play in helping our side overcome those challenges?
Yeah, WinRed's logo is a shield for a reason. We exist to protect the party. That's why we chose the shield. That's why WinRed is such a critical piece of party infrastructure, because we all operate through the WinRed PAC, and the PAC serves as the merchant of record for all the federal candidates. It makes it really difficult for big tech companies to target individual campaigns. If you want to go after a random congressional candidates donation processing, you're also picking a fight with the 7,000 other campaigns that use the platform, including President Trump, Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Thune, etc. And so there's strength in numbers, and that's really what WinRed brings to the party and why this is so important. I want to talk about the email and the texting separately. On the email piece, specifically relating to Gmail and recent incident we had, what was happening there was Gmail was labeling emails that contained WinRed links as suspicious. We mobilized quickly. We learned that,
and like a really big, not just labeling them, but like a red bar. It was
exactly. Yeah. You log into your Gmail account and you would see this, and open the email and you see this big message. And well, the problem was that, first of all, we don't send emails, right? So this has nothing to do with WinRed sending practices. There's not really anything WinRed could change in its sending practices, if this had to do with spam or otherwise to address it. And because all 7,000 candidates are using WinRed, if that's appearing, it's appearing for everybody, right? Despite what your sending practices may be. So we reached out to Google right away, and we came at them pretty aggressively on this. And what we learned was that there's actually a foreign company that they rely on called Serble. Serble is used to help manage spam and filter and all that stuff. And they were the ones who were sending the signal to Google to place this message. Well, what that meant was you had a foreign company who is directly involved in deciding if and how elected officials are able to reach their voters. To me, that's insane. We shouldn't have that, and we shouldn't have that sort of setup. So we reached out to Serble directly. They initially told us that it was our sending practices and that we had to follow Canadian spam laws. Okay, well, A, we don't send these emails, so it's not our sending practices that we can do anything about. And B, we're not in Canada. These are U.S. elections.
It doesn't apply to us. Yeah.
Right. It's very concerning. You got a European company telling you to follow Canadian rules on something that you're not doing. It didn't make a lot of sense. And so we came at them pretty aggressively on this and continued pushing. Eventually, we were able to get this resolved. And the notice went away. Google removed it, and Serble, made sure that we weren't listed on anything, which is great and solves it for now. But, there's certainly a big question with this, and I strongly believe Google needs to address this publicly. They need to make sure that foreign actors are not interfering in our elections, and they need to make sure WinRed links are not being flagged, because we know who's using them. They're elected officials that are running for office, and we're not sending the emails. So holding all WinRed links to this standard, this doesn't make a lot of sense because, again, we're not the ones blasting these emails out.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that gets lost in all of this. There was a pretty well-known commentator in the cybersecurity space who kind of sounded off on this earlier this week. And the thing is, look, we're not asking for special treatment. We're just asking for equal treatment. And so, treat ActBlue links the same as you would treat WinRed links, and vice versa. Exactly. So what else are we seeing outside of email?
Yeah, on the texting side, this is a little bit of a different situation, but as I'm sure you're aware, iOS is rolling out some updates, and that has the risk of starting to send more text messages to spam filters. That's been a big change that they're working on, and has created quite an uproar among the political class, because we have to remember that political texting, while used for fundraising is just a small part of it. Texting is used for volunteering. It's used for
Yep.
GOTV. It's used for voter registration and events and all sorts of stuff that I'm probably not even aware of. Relational organizing,
Yeah,
all these things.
even emergency awareness, not just political. Yeah.
Exactly. And so WinRed, because we are used by, the party and so many campaigns, we're in a position to be able to turn features around really quickly and deliver that to everybody to help. And so we saw an important opportunity here, and that's why last week we rolled out a new feature that we call the contact card upsell. In short, what that is when a donor gives, campaigns and organizations have the opportunity to add a contact card download after the donor gives. And when
Mhm.
the donor clicks that button, they're saving a contact card to their system that can include the campaign's phone number, their email. And the idea is that by saving that information, they're no longer an unknown sender. The donor has indicated that they want to receive communications, from these numbers, from these emails, and that should help with inboxing big time. The results so far, they're preliminary, but they've been pretty good. We've been out for a few days, and about 25% of donors accept the upsell and download
Wow.
the contact card. So that's great, and it's awesome that WinRed's in a position to be able to deliver this sort of feature for all of our candidates.
Yeah, that was a really quick turnaround by you guys. Well done. I also just think it's probably something that's good practice that we probably should have been doing all along, getting these contact cards. And so hopefully, yeah, I mean, I think we'll also get a boost on this. Hopefully, if I think we, well, I'm hopeful that Apple keeps this as a opt-in feature rather than an opt-out, so it's not on by default for most people. But even if that is the case, then it's good to have more people saving your phone number, because that's just going to help with inbox and message recognition and things like that.
Exactly.
So there's always been a lot of frustration about the volume, tone, and frequency of digital fundraising. Now, again, as you said, WinRed has nothing to do with that. You don't send text, you don't send messages, you don't send email, but you still get all of the blame for it because it's your links that are coming through in there. What does your data tell you about how campaigns should address these concerns of volume and frequency?
Yeah, it's a tricky topic, and as you pointed out, it's obligatory. Got to remind everybody that's listening. WinRed doesn't send the text, we don't send the emails, nor are we involved in the messaging or the strategy decisions around that.
The
That's
moment I see someone blame WinRed for something I say, okay, I can discount their opinion because it's coming from a place of being uninformed.
Yes, it's very frustrating when a news article or something just completely gets that wrong. But most people in the space understand it, which is great. But it's still an education process. But yeah, we're the donation processor, and we focus on providing the best fundraising pages in the business. That's our goal. We're the end of the funnel when we think about the whole donor journey, getting contacted and getting asked to donate. As far as the actual marketing is concerned, I think the truth is that the way campaigns fundraise is a response to what works.
Mm-hmm.
People respond to incentives, right? They're going to follow what helps them achieve their goals. And campaigns want to have as many donors as possible and raise as much money as they can. Both make sense. It's pretty straightforward. And with elections every 2 years, there's always urgency that's real, and elections do matter. They're important, right? So they're sort of stuck between this. You've got these real incentives, and you want to treat your donors correctly, and you're constantly getting pulled on both sides. I mean, it goes without saying that turning off donors will be bad long term for everybody, and so the market's got to adjust to be able to figure out that balance. And I do think most campaigns get that, at least the ones I talk to in fundraising teams. Everybody understands what's going on, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do we do that exactly, right? There is no simple answer, and that's part of the problem with this whole thing. But I think balance is key. That's the general guiding principle here. Urgency is powerful, and it is important, and it does matter, but use it when it matters. Using it constantly, it dilutes the value of it, and that's
Right.
when it's going to start to really hurt us, is when these tactics no longer work because they're just used too often, too frequently. I think trying to create real memberships is still a good goal for all organizations out there, especially the larger programs. Your donors are giving to you. Give them something in return, whether it's a monthly Zoom call, with a candidate or policy advisors, whatever, whether it's some sort of newsletter, merchandise. There's a whole bunch of things that people can do to make it something that's more real. Because look, donors want to help. That's why they give. This is important to them. And making sure that they stay engaged is critical for the party.
Yeah, one of the things that I've just sort of picked up on in studying this and talking to folks in the space is that sending the people who complain about how frequently they get messages aren't donating through those channels. So it's sort of like to your point earlier, it does work because people are sending. I think ironically, if you want to get fewer messages, you want to see better deliverability on SMS and email inboxing. So every one of those sends reaches more people and they can raise more money. And I think that would reduce some of the pressure. You're listening to the Campaign Trend Podcast. I'm speaking with Ryan Lyk from WinRed about the WinRed Effect, looking at the last 6 years of the platform. So, Ryan, if I'm running a congressional or state level campaign, what's the single most important thing I should take away from this report?
Yeah, WinRed was created to help our candidates raise more and to win. And the impact of that has been most noticeable among down ballot races, which sort of makes sense because prior to WinRed, presidential campaigns, we had the resources to hire and bring in big teams, and even statewide candidates had significantly more resources. But we've seen that change considerably where down ballot races are having more robust digital programs, which is great. And it's a sign that the small dollar ecosystem on our side really is continuing to grow. Having the unified party platform is a big reason for that too. It's allowed us to turbocharge development, which means more features, more power in those features, and more ease of use in being able to utilize them for your campaign. Tools that were once really only usable by these big statewide campaigns are now available to all candidates and have become considerably easier to use, which is great. So if you weren't investing in digital before and you're a congressional candidate or a state level candidate, or you didn't know where to start, I think now is a great time to dive in. And we're starting to see that in folks that are signing up for the platform. First of all, NRCC has great resources for congressional candidates out there that want to get started on digital. RSLC for the state level candidates as well. Both are fantastic organizations and are here to help. And what we've seen on the platform is that this off year, we've had more signups for WinRed than any off year in the history of our platform, which is great. Even when we launched, which you would expect a huge rush coming in, right? More are signing up right now. And 75% of those are state level candidates.
Wow. So, I mean, the argument has always been a rising tide lifts all boats, and we are seeing that. One of the things you hit on it, right? As you know, I train a lot of down ballot candidates at the state and local level and below, where they would never have access to all of the widgets and features and shot clocks and upsells and things like that, were it not for a platform like WinRed. And so I always encourage them, look, even if you're not expecting to raise any money, just sign up for it. It's free. And you can use that for your landing pages. And I think that's the big thing, is that you want to be in this ecosystem. And so even if you don't do anything to fundraise, money could still come your way just by being in the WinRed platform. Now, that is not a strategy that I endorse long-term, but I mean, I think the big thing is sign up, get these resources. What are the mistakes that you see campaigns still make when it comes to online fundraising? I think maybe I touched on one just now, which is, if you build it, they will come. That's not exactly how it works.
Yeah, we do see that sometimes, and remind folks that you've got to market. Marketing is the key part of this. The people don't just find your donation page, maybe some, and maybe they're more optimized than ever before. So you still get some lift, which is great. But in terms of utilizing the platform, there's two areas that I think we still need to grow, and that probably the biggest mistakes come from. One is testing and one is conduiting. So on the testing piece, we provide a ton of tools to A/B test pretty much every single step of the donor journey, whether it's from a petition page redirecting to a donation page, or a donation page redirecting to an upsell, or testing your entire upsell flow against another upsell flow. We have all these A/B testing tools that are built into the system. And I've seen some pretty good results from folks who are playing around with them and trying to figure it out. But I think a lot of organizations get caught in paralysis where they've got a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're busy. They're smaller teams. They've got goals to meet, and it's overwhelming. They don't know what to test, and they're always trying to figure out what's the grand slam, what's the big thing that we're going to
Right,
test
yeah.
and see if it works. And, the truth with digital fundraising is grand slams are great. It's the equivalent of going viral. That's cool and good for you if that happens. But you can't really manufacture that all the time. If you
Mm-hmm.
could, everyone would, and it would be diluted and you'd be back to square one. And so the real way to win a baseball game is singles and doubles. That's what you're
That's right.
focusing on, right? You got to keep hitting those singles. And so when it comes to testing, the way I encourage folks to approach it is lay out your donor flow, and you've got all these upsells, you've got all these pages, maybe some petition pages, and start doing little tweaks, making iterative changes to the process. You've got this upsell, cool. Change the colors, change the text, change the imagery, change the button amounts. Let it run for a week, see what happens. Maybe nothing, and you're like, cool, move on to the next thing. Maybe there's a little bit of lift, so continue to build on that. Maybe it's actually worse, so you want to revert. And if you're an agency and you're working with a lot of clients, you can replicate this across all your clients and get faster results right away. Now, when you get a result, it doesn't mean that you found the silver bullet for this. You're not creating a
Right.
PhD paper, right? It doesn't. We're not trying to figure out what is the best possible thing to work. The end of discussion takeaway from all
What works
this.
right now?
You're trying
Yeah.
to figure out what works right now and to continue to build on that so that your program is continuing to progress and move forward. And I think that's one area that a lot of agencies and digital campaigns out there can continue to improve upon, because it is a really powerful piece. And it's how we figure out too what's working, so we know what to continue to build, what directions to go in. It helps from a product feedback standpoint as well. The other,
Yeah, and I think from a testing perspective, it's almost more about the culture and the mindset that you approach this with. As obviously you're getting, maybe a 10%, 15% improvement with each one of these tests that you're doing, but really it's about, okay, I'm, to your point, thinking about what that donor flow is. What is their experience? Am I having empathy for them? Of, okay, I clicked on this link and then this happened, and then, oh, well, that doesn't really make sense, and so I'm going to test that. And that really, getting under the hood, really, I think, is the value of testing.
yeah, 100%. The other side of this is conduiting. It's a very powerful part of the WinRed platform through the conduit pack, and it's something that
Mm-hmm.
ActBlue figured out 15 years ago or 20 years ago. They had a 15-year head start when we launched, and the way conduiting works is it allows candidates to fundraise together. A donor can give to multiple candidates at once, and it's a single charge on their credit card statement. So the acceptance rates are much higher than if you have 15
Mm-hmm.
charges or something like that. And it's great. It allows us to help direct funds into candidates that really need it, the swing districts, the target races, right? And it's all controlled by the campaign. They get a fundraise for the folks that they want to fundraise for, which is great. We've seen that increase considerably over time. $346 million has been invested in other campaigns by
Wow.
the use of conduiting, which is tremendous. But Democrats do a lot more of it, and it's in their bloodstream. I usually point out to folks that ask about this discrepancy. They ask why do they view fundraising differently? Why do they view conduiting differently? When a candidate on their side announces, everybody conduits to them. They don't even have to
Right.
rally the troops to do it. They just do it. And the truth is that the campaign managers over there came up with ActBlue existing and conduiting existing, right? Because you think what was happening 10 years ago in Democrat politics, ActBlue existed. They had
Right.
access to this. And those folks were field staff or digital staff, entry level. Whereas 10 years ago, we didn't have this. The folks who were in those same positions were not exposed to this. and it's a relatively newer phenomenon. So there's a little bit of a gap there, and it is closing,
Right.
and it requires us to continue to educate folks on how to do this and how to use it. But when the Watley campaign announced, they had 50 organizations conduit to him, which was
Wow. That's great.
tremendous. Yeah, big
Yeah.
effort by Christian, the team, and the NRSC, and everybody that was working on that, and that's great. We want to see more of it.
Yeah. So before we wrap up today, I want to hear from you. What innovations or features are you most excited about for the next cycle with WinRed?
Yeah, we've got a lot in store. First of all, we've spent the better part of this year making some big major improvements to the back end. It's the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that people don't really see or interact with. It's not as cool to talk about,
Huge
but it's
quality of life improvement for the people who
critical.
live in this every day, though.
Exactly. Every system you use online has this major back end side that you'll never see or understand probably, and but everything runs off that. It's the key part, and so we've been doing a lot of updates there to really set us up for the future, so we can start rolling out new features. One of the biggest changes that will come from that is something we announced a little while ago, which is a revamped user portal and page building experience. There's a whole lot that goes into that, but thousands and thousands of pages are made every single day on the WinRed
Wow.
platform. And we've spent years fine tuning that process because saving people 5 seconds here, 10 seconds here can really add up for how quickly our site can fundraise. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to invest in and build on that. This will be our biggest update yet to that process, and it's going to be pretty tremendous when we get it out there. But once we do that, one other feature that we're going to be announcing here for the first time that's coming
All
soon
right.
is what we call recurring retention. So recurring files are an important part of every campaign. The excitement of the election really builds them up, and then they carry into the off year. And so they're a big part of the budget and fundraising for our campaigns throughout the cycle, right? We want to help them to protect those, make sure that they're growing and that they're reducing churn as much as they possibly can. Congressional candidates, for example, from 2020 to this last cycle, the recurring file on those campaigns increased about 125%, which is
That's
tremendous.
huge. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of growth there as people are investing more in digital fundraising. And so this new feature set will help reduce churn while also giving donors more options and control over their giving, which is an important piece of making sure we're treating donors correctly and giving them the tools that they
Mm-hmm.
need to manage their giving online. So what this rollout is that when a donor is going to cancel their recurring subscription that they have to a candidate, we're giving them different options. Previously, it was cancel or keep. That was it, two
Right.
extremes. Now we're meeting them in the middle. We're providing them the ability to maybe skip a month. Maybe they just don't want to pay this month because they've got other budget items they want to spend their money on, but they want to continue to give. They want to continue to support the campaign. Maybe monthly giving isn't really in their interest anymore, but they do want to give at a lower frequency, maybe quarterly or annually or something like that. The idea
Right.
is that candidates no longer have to completely lose the recurring subscription and fight to win it back. They're able to retain it at a lower frequency and reduce the overall churn for the recurring file.
Really cool. I mean, and it's exactly like what we experience in other software. So earlier before we recorded, I was canceling a software subscription, and it kept telling me, "Hey, do you want to get a discount? Do you want to, maybe pause for a few days?" And like this is already being done, and I'm excited to see this because I mean it just shows sort of like the sophistication that's going on at WinRed, because I mean this is the only thing that you guys do, which is like figure out how to improve that donor experience, how to improve the experience for the user. So thanks for sharing that on our show for the first time. We'll look forward to seeing that, and we'll have to have you back on to talk about it. Well, my thanks to Ryan for a great conversation. Where can we learn more about the WinRed report and check that out?
Yeah, so anyone who wants to read the WinRed Effect, you can head to win.red/memo. We've got the full report there for you. And if you head to my X account, I'm easy to find, it's just my name, RyanLyk. I've got information on the WinRed Effect, as well as the new feature we just announced and some more details there I'll be posting shortly.
And there's also a link for listeners in the show notes if they want to go click on that as well. If this episode made you a little bit smarter, gave you something to think about, all we ask is that you share it with a friend or colleague. You'll look smarter in the process, and more people learn about the show. So it's a win-win all around. Be sure to check out our website, campaigntrend.com, to subscribe to our newsletters and learn more about the podcast. With that, I'll say thanks for listening. See you next time.